A year ago, Sam Wright finally made it to the top of the wait list to buy an electric car. But then he was faced with the question of how he would charge it at his Melbourne apartment.
If I didn't have a charger like this, I'd need to go to a public charger, and they're pretty few and far between. At the moment it's getting better, but there's not one really close by, so that would be pretty inconvenient.
Getting a charger installed in his car park wasn't straightforward. Sam spent months negotiating with the body corporate, and eventually they agreed on a solution, running an electricity cable from the apartment he owns down to the car park in the basement. That involved taking out a 99-year lease on the space of the cable.
Because I only own the car spot and my apartment, but not the space in between, I needed to lease the space where the cable runs, so just that little section there. And then I had to get a lawyer to draft up a contract, pay for that lawyer, and then get all the other apartment owners in this building to vote.
So you're paying to lease the width of that cable up to your apartment?
Yeah, exactly,
wow.
yeah.
$5,000, and several months later, Sam admits not everyone would be willing to jump through the hoops.
There was a few times when I thought I should just throw in the towel and give up here. But, if you've got to go through that whole process of getting a lease agreement drafted and then putting that to a vote, the next person in this building is going to have to do the exact same thing, even though I've already done it. That's pretty, onerous.
That onerous process is part of a bigger problem electric vehicle owners can face, where systems and processes across society are struggling to keep up with the pace of technological change that EVs are driving.
The charging in apartment buildings is a great example of the type of complexity that we have in this transition to electric vehicles in Australia, where the technical solutions and the financial solutions already exist, and in quite a lot of states, even the legal solutions already exist in order to allow people to be able to build those chargers. The bigger challenge is that information gap. Usually this looks like one person showing up to their owner's corp with an electric vehicle saying, "What do I do? How do we start installing a charger?" And usually the response is, "What's an electric vehicle and what's an electric vehicle charger?"
That's one of the gaps the Electric Vehicle Council is hoping to close.
What we're finding is right around the world, Europe, the USA, UK, across Asia, they've been developing their version of a national policy and a national plan for the last decade, and they've been on this journey while we haven't. So it's been left entirely up to consumers to bridge all of those gaps.
At the moment, the number of Australians who own electric cars is quite low, but it's growing. Around 3% of new car sales are EVs, compared to a global average of around 8%. It's even higher in places like Germany, where about a quarter of new car sales are electric.
The Australian government is hoping to change that with new tax breaks it passed this month that cut the cost of electric vehicles by up to $12,500 by dropping the fringe benefit tax.
It's obviously not as wide-ranging an incentive as is available in other markets where every consumer gets a financial benefit from buying an electric vehicle, but it does mean that businesses and people using a particular type of lease were able to really see that benefit.
Morning.
David Pocock was one of the crossbenchers who helped pass the bill and says the flow-on effects should make second-hand EVs more widely available and affordable.
The recent EV bill, there was an exemption from fringe benefit tax for fleet and company vehicles, is essentially a handout to mostly wealthier Australians. But there's a really strong argument that that will create a second-hand EV market in 3, 4, 5 years' time, which is crucial.
The Senator negotiated amendments including a sunset clause to phase out tax breaks on plug-in hybrid vehicles after April 2025. Hybrids are cars that use a mix of electric power and petrol.
I don't see why we should be subsidising plug-in hybrids when we can subsidise EVs, because I think in 3 years' time people are going to want second-hand EVs, not plug-in hybrids, which is sort of this halfway technology.
The Coalition opposed the bill, saying the money would be better spent building charging infrastructure. The government said the legislation would help to make EVs more affordable.
The big thing that's missing is fuel efficiency standards. That wasn't on the table, but certainly something that I'll continue to push the government on to unlock more models for Australia, to get manufacturers sending more affordable EVs to Australia.
The transition to complete EVs is determined by battery availability. That's what drives supply, and the supply is not sufficient to meet world demand. And until we get to that point, there is always going to be a scenario where not everyone will be able to buy a new vehicle that is driven as an electric vehicle.
Those who already own an EV like Sam are hopeful their efforts navigating a sometimes frustrating new system will pave the way for others.
More and more apartments will need electric vehicle infrastructure and support for people charging their cars. I was the first person here, maybe it was tricky, but I think for the next person, at least there's a path forward, and it's kind of like we've done it before, and so it's kind of like a process you could follow, and it should, in theory, be easier for them.